There's something almost meditative about watching Rick do fence duty at the prison. Season 3, those early episodes, when they've just cleared the yard and started building routines, Rick walks the perimeter, stabbing walkers through chain link, one after another, mechanical and safe. Laurie's pregnant inside. Carl's learning to be useful. The group's eating breakfast together like a family. It feels sustainable, almost boring in the best way. Then you remember what Negan says years later in Season 7, Episode 1. Bet you thought you were all gonna grow old together, sitting around the table at Sunday dinner and the happily ever after. No, doesn't work like that, Rick. And you realize the show was always going to break that illusion. The question isn't if the walls fall, it's when, and how much it costs when they do. There's this moment right before the governor's tank appears at the prison gates, everyone inside eating breakfast, and the silence feels heavy with something none of them can see coming yet. When did you first feel it? That shift in The Walking Dead, when the show stopped letting you breathe. The prison appears in Season 3, Episode 1, Seed, and it feels like an answer to every problem the group's faced since Atlanta. Walls, space, infrastructure. Rick and the others clear it, cell by cell, walker by walker, and for the first time since the farm burned, there's possibility, not just survival, actual living. Gardens could be planted. Children could be raised. Communities could be built inside these concrete walls that feel so much stronger than Hershel's fences ever were. Rick's leadership transforms in those early prison episodes. He's not the sheriff's deputy anymore, not even the reluctant leader from the farm. He's become something harder, more focused. When they first breach the prison yard, Rick moves like a machine. Silent hand signals, efficient kills, no hesitation. Andrew Lincoln plays it with this controlled intensity that shows how much Rick's changed since Season 1, when he rode into Atlanta on horseback, looking for survivors and hoping for rescue. The pattern The Walking Dead establishes is deceptively simple. Discover a safe place, invest hope in it, build domestic routines, then watch as hidden threats emerge to destroy everything. We saw it at the CDC in Season 1, Episode 6, TS-19. Dr. Jenner's facility seemed like salvation until the self-destruct timer started counting down. Jenner's final words to Rick, whispered so quietly we almost missed them. We're all infected. The truth that rewrites everything, delivered in the place that was supposed to have answers. Hershel's farm followed the same arc across Season 2. The barn, full of walkers, Hershel kept hoping were curable. The meals around the dining table. Maggie and Glenn falling in love in the pharmacy's dusty aisles. It felt sustainable until the herd came and the barn burned, and they scattered to the highway with nothing but what they could carry. The prison promised to break that cycle. These walls were different concrete and steel, built to contain the worst humanity had to offer back when civilization still existed. If any place could last, it should have been this one. And for a while, it does. Season 3 and most of Season 4 take place behind those prison walls, the longest the group stays anywhere in the early series. Long enough to forget what it felt like to always be running. Laurie's pregnancy becomes the emotional center of that early prison hope. A baby, born into this new world, but protected by walls strong enough to give her a chance. Carl hardens into something beyond his years, taking responsibility for walkers and supply runs like it's normal for a 13-year-old. The council forms Rick, Daryl, Hershel, Glenn, Carol, Sasha, attempting democracy in the apocalypse. But here's what sits with me about the prison arc. The fences became routine. Rick stabbing walkers through chain link wasn't dramatic anymore. It was maintenance, like mowing a lawn. The gesture of his hand gripping the fence, the repeated stab of his knife, the pile of bodies on the other side, these images show safety becoming mundane. And maybe that's when danger is most dangerous. When you stop seeing it as a threat and start seeing it as Tuesday morning's chore. The motif of walls and fences runs through the entire Walking Dead franchise, and it always means protection at first. The prison fence meant the walkers stay out there, we stay in here, and as long as we maintain the barrier, we're safe. Simple, observable, reassuring. But what if the walls were never meant to hold? What if safety in this universe was always temporary by design, and investing hope in any structure, CDC, farm, prison, Alexandria, Commonwealth, was always going to end in loss? Before the prison, before the farm, there was Hershel's barn, and inside it, there was Sophia. Season 2, Episode 7, pretty much dead already. Might be the first moment The Walking Dead showed us it wasn't going to follow the rules we expected. Carol's daughter Sophia went missing in Episode 1 of that season. The group spent 6 episodes searching, hoping, arguing about whether to stay at the farm or keep moving. Daryl nearly died looking for her. Carol held on to belief through sheer force of will, and the audience held on to hope because this was still early enough in the series that we believed children might be protected by narrative convention. Then Shane opens Hershel's barn. The walkers stumble out into the sunlight, and the group puts them down one by one. Hershel watches his wife, his neighbors, people he'd been keeping safe in the barn believing they could be cured, get executed in his front yard. The silence after the gunfire stops is devastating, just wind and grief and the smoking barrels of guns. And then one more walker stumbles out, small, wearing the clothes Carol described, Sophia. The moment rewrites the show's emotional contract with the audience. Melissa McBride's performance as Carol collapses is almost unwatchable. Not theatrical grief, but the specific devastation of hope dying all at once. She'd believed for 6 episodes. And the whole time Sophia was already dead, already turned, locked in the barn 20 yards from where Carol slept. Rick steps forward. He's the one who shoots Sophia. Not Daryl, who'd been searching for her. Not Shane, who'd argued they should stop wasting resources on a dead girl. Rick, who'd promised Carol they'd find her daughter. Andrew Lincoln plays it with his face completely flat. This is the cost of leadership. Doing what no one else can bear to do, carrying weight that crushes you but can't be put down. The pattern starts here. The Walking Dead kills hope before it kills characters. Sophia was probably dead by episode 2 or 3 of season 2. We just didn't know it yet. The show let us hope, let Carol hope, let Daryl nearly die searching, then revealed the truth had been waiting in the barn the entire time. Some fans mark this as the moment they realized the show was different, darker, willing to break unspoken rules about who gets protected. Others point to the CDC explosion or later deaths as more significant. But Sophia's death operates on a different level. It's not dramatic or violent. It's quiet devastation. The discovered truth that hope was already dead and we were mourning it in the wrong tense. Carol's entire arc grows from this barn. Every decision she makes afterward carries Sophia's absence. When Carol kills Karen and David at the prison in season 4, episode 2, infected, burning them alive to stop the flu from spreading, that's the barn, teaching her that sentiment gets people killed. When she tells Lizzie to look at the flowers in season 4, episode 14, the grove, before shooting the child who killed her sister. That's the barn showing her that some losses can't be undone, only ended quickly. When Carol, becomes the strategic killer who burns Terminus, who threatens Pete in Alexandria, who eventually crosses an ocean to find Daryl in France. All of it traces back to the moment she collapsed in Herschel's yard, watching Rick shoot her daughter. The barn didn't just kill Sophia. It killed a version of Carol who believed that trying hard enough, hoping desperately enough, could change outcomes. The silence in that scene is crucial. After the gunshot, no one speaks. No one comforts Carol. No one knows what to say. The wind moves through the Georgia trees, and the group stands there with smoking guns, realizing that searching for 6 episodes didn't matter. Sophia was in the barn. Hope was already dead. The barn becomes Carol's recurring nightmare and her moral compass simultaneously. It's the place she learned that love doesn't protect children in this world. And it's the memory that justifies every brutal choice she makes afterward, because if she'd been harder, faster, more willing to accept terrible truths earlier, maybe Sophia would have lived. And Carol? She remembered that barn for every decision she ever made after. She had to. Because forgetting it would mean Sophia died for nothing. Rick's sheriff hat is one of the most iconic props in television, and it carries meaning that transforms every time it changes hands. It's not just a costume piece, it's inherited burden, visible proof that survival costs more than blood. Rick wears it first, obviously. King County Sheriff's Deputy Rick Grimes, waking up from a coma in Season 1, Episode 1, Days Gone By, and putting on his uniform like the world still makes sense. The hat represents authority in that moment, law and order, the idea that there are still rules to enforce and people to protect through institutional power. But watch how Rick wears it less and less as the series progresses. By Season 3 at the prison, the hat appears occasionally but not consistently. Rick stopped believing in what it represents. He's become something else. Something the old world didn't have a uniform for. When Lori dies in Season 3, Episode 4, Killer Within, Rick stops wearing the hat almost entirely. It sits on tables, gets left in cells, becomes another object he carries but doesn't claim. Carl picks it up. The hat's too big on him in Season 2 and 3, but he grows into it. By Season 4, Carl wears the hat like armor, like proof he's not a child anymore, even though he desperately still is. When Carl gets shot in the eye defending Alexandria in Season 6, Episode 9, No Way Out, he keeps wearing the hat. The bullet took half his face, but the hat survives, and somehow that matters. Carl's death in Season 8, Episode 9, Honor, breaks something fundamental in The Walking Dead's narrative structure. Carl was the presumptive endgame character, the child who would grow up in the apocalypse and lead the next generation, the living proof that humanity could still raise good people in the worst circumstances. The comics end with adult Carl telling his daughter about Rick, about the early days, about how they built civilization back from nothing. The show kills him instead. A walker bite from helping a stranger named Siddiq, discovering the wound too late to do anything but say goodbye. Carl spends his final episode writing letters to everyone he loves, explaining the world he wished they could build. His letter to Rick specifically asks for mercy, for peace with Negan, for choosing to build rather than destroy. The emotional cost is incalculable. Rick loses the reason he'd been fighting everything was for Carl, to give his son a future worth inheriting. Without Carl, Rick's purpose collapses. Andrew Lincoln plays the rest of Season 8 like a man moving underwater, mechanically making decisions because stopping would mean confronting a grief too large to survive. Judith inherits the hat in Season 9 after the time jump. She's maybe 9 years old, wearing her father's hat and carrying his python, and Kaylee Fleming plays her with this eerie competence that's both impressive and sad. Judith never knew her mother. Her father, Rick, disappeared when she was an infant. Carl, who would have been her brother and protector, died before she was old enough to remember him. The hat is her only connection to a family she knows only through stories. And Judith wears it differently than Rick or Carl did. For her, it's not authority or burden, it's inheritance without context. She knows the hat matters because everyone tells her it does, but she never saw what it represented in the old world. To Judith, the apocalypse is just the world. The hat is just a hat her family wore, so she wears it too. Then in the series finale, Season 11, Episode 24, Rest in Peace, Judith passes the hat to RJ, Rick and Michonne's son, born after Rick's disappearance, young enough that he barely remembers anything before the Commonwealth. The hat on RJ's head is almost comically large, the same way it was on young Carl. But it's his now, another generation removed from what it originally meant. The motif tracks across the entire series: authority, burden, inheritance, possibility. Each person who wears the hat carries different weight, different meaning, different futures. And the hat itself battered, sweat-stained, too large for children and too small to contain what it represents, keeps moving forward. The hat kept moving. But what it meant changed every time someone new wore it. Season 4, Episode 14, The Grove, is the episode The Walking Dead fans cite when they want to prove the show goes places the other series won't. Carol, Tyrese, and the children Lizzie and Micah are traveling to Terminus after the prison falls. They find a house, a pecan grove, a possibility of peace. And then Lizzie kills her sister Micah to prove that walkers are just different, not dangerous, that Micah will come back and still be herself. Carol finds them in the yard, Micah's body on the ground. Lizzie holding a bloody knife, smiling, explaining that she was about to do the same to baby Judith to prove her point. She'll come back, Lizzie says. I didn't hurt her brain. Melissa McBride and Brighton Charbino play the scene with devastating calm. Lizzie genuinely believes she's proven something important. Carol realizes that Lizzie is a threat that can't be managed, a child who will keep killing to test her theory. And Tyrese, who just discovered that Carol killed his girlfriend Karen back at the prison, has to watch Carol do what neither of them want to do, but both know is necessary. Just look at the flowers, Lizzie, Carol says, walking the child away from the house. It's the same thing Carol told Lizzie to do when she was afraid. Focus on something beautiful, something alive, and the fear will pass. But this time, Carol's telling her to look at the flowers so she won't see the gun being raised behind her head. The gunshot happens off-screen. We stay with Tyrese and baby Judith at the house. The sound echoes through the pecan grove, and when Carol returns, her face shows nothing and everything simultaneously. She sits with Tyrese, and they talk about forgiveness. I forgive you, Tyrese says about Karen's death, but I'm never going to forget. It's one of the most emotionally precise lines in the series: forgiveness without forgetting, acceptance without absolution. Chad Coleman's delivery is quiet and destroyed. He understands why Carol burned Karen alive. He even agrees it might have been necessary to stop the flu. But his girlfriend still died, screaming, and he'll carry that forever. The flower motif appears throughout The Walking Dead in moments that seem gentle, but carry violence underneath. Back in Season 2, Episode 4, Cherokee Rose, Daryl gives Carol a Cherokee rose and tells her the legend how Cherokee mothers' tears became flowers when their children were taken on the Trail of Tears. It's beautiful and sad, hope and grief coexisting. Terminus, in season 4 and 5, has sunflowers painted on signs leading survivors to sanctuary, bright, innocent, growing over the cannibal compound where people are butchered for meat. The Commonwealth, in later seasons, has elaborate gardens, flowers maintained by workers in a stratified society that looks civilized and humane, but runs on exploitation. And then there's Carol telling Lizzie to look at the flowers before executing a child. The show takes something associated with beauty and growth and makes it the last thing a little girl sees before dying. Season 10, Episode 14, Look at the Flowers, names itself after this moment and brings Carol full circle. She's captured by Alpha's whisperers, and while imprisoned, she hallucinates. Alpha appears to her and lists everyone Carol's lost: Sophia, Lizzie, Mika, Sam, Henry, everyone Carol couldn't save or had to kill herself. The flowers return as a motif of Carol's guilt, the beauty that frames her losses. The moral balance in the grove is what makes it unbearable. Carol's action is both mercy and monstrosity. Lizzie couldn't be fixed or contained. She would have killed Judith. She would have kept killing, believing she was proving walkers are just misunderstood. Carol made the only choice that protected the living, but it's still executing a mentally ill child. It's still killing someone you'd been protecting, someone who trusted you. The episode doesn't let Carol or the audience off the hook by making Lizzie purely evil or purely sick. She's a damaged child in an apocalypse, and the apocalypse doesn't allow for the time or resources to heal her. Every flower in this show is a warning dressed as beauty. Look closely, and you'll see the thorns, the graves, the blood in the soil that makes things grow. Season 7, Episode 1, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be, is the episode that broke The Walking Dead's relationship with a significant portion of its audience, Negan's lineup. Abraham dies first, defiant, telling Negan, "Suck my nuts." Then Daryl punches Negan, and as punishment, Negan turns to Glenn. Steven Yeun's final performance is horrifying and heartbreaking simultaneously. The first blow from Lucille caves in Glenn's skull. His eye pops out. He can barely speak. And what he says, through blood and destroyed face and imminent death, is, "Maggie, I'll find you." Not anger, not a curse at Negan, not even pain. Just a promise to his wife, a declaration of love that transcends the brutal reality of his murder. Glenn dies exactly as he lived, thinking about someone else, trying to comfort the person he loves even as he's being killed in front of her. Lauren Cohan's performance as Maggie, forced to watch, pregnant with Glenn's child, screaming and restrained by the group, it's almost unwatchable. This isn't dramatic TV violence. This is torture, drawn out and performed specifically to break the survivor's will to resist. The overnight ratings told a story the show couldn't ignore. Season 6's finale cliffhanger drew 17 million viewers, a massive audience desperate to know who Negan killed. Season 7's premiere answered that question and lost 3.5 million of them. Some came back eventually. Many never did. The Walking Dead's viewership declined steadily after Glenn's death, never recovering the cultural dominance it held through seasons 4 to 6. The pattern here is about showrunner Scott Gimple's manipulation tactics becoming too transparent. In Season 6, Episode 3, Thank You, Glenn appeared to die in a dumpster, pulled down by walkers, Nicholas's body falling on top of him. The show let audiences believe Glenn was dead for weeks before revealing he'd survived by hiding under the dumpster. It was a cheap trick that eroded trust. Then the season 6 finale cliffhanger Negan's lineup, the first-person POV shot. Taking it like a champ, fade to black. 6 months of speculation about who died. Online betting pools. Actors contractually obligated to lie in interviews. The show prioritized suspense over storytelling, and fans felt manipulated. Glenn's actual death then felt less like tragedy and more like punishment for caring. The show had faked his death, made audiences grieve, and then relieved, only to kill him for real in the most brutal way possible. The emotional whiplash broke something. But here's where it gets interesting across the spin-offs. Negan recreates the lineup. In The Walking Dead, Dead City Season 1, Negan's captured by enemies in Manhattan who know his history. They force him to hallucinate, and he sees Lucille, not the Bat, but his dead wife, the woman the Bat was named for. The hallucination makes Negan relive his worst choices, including the lineup and Glenn's murder. Maggie overhears Negan's hallucination confession. She listens to him relive, killing her husband, hears the guilt and self-hatred in his voice. And in that moment, watching Negan torture himself more effectively than she ever could, Maggie makes a choice. She doesn't kill him. She still hates him. She'll probably always hate him. But killing him won't bring Glenn back, and letting him live with the guilt might be the worst punishment anyway. The motif of walls and fences transforms here. Negan was imprisoned at Alexandria for years after the war, a literal cage he chose to stay in because he couldn't forgive himself. Manhattan in Dead City is a walled island, sealed off and overrun, a different kind of cage. And Maggie's hatred of Negan is the emotional cage they're both trapped in. She can't let go, he can't atone, and they're bound together by Glenn's death in ways neither can escape. Lauren Cohan and Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performances across Dead City show two people who should be enemies, learning to be something more complicated, not friends, not forgiven, but partners who understand each other's damage because they were both there when the worst thing happened. Glenn's final words, "Maggie, I'll find you," echo across years and spin-offs. He didn't find her as a ghost or a resurrection, but his absence shaped every choice Maggie made afterward, every alliance, every compromise, every moment she chose to keep building instead of giving up. Maggie broke the loop by not killing Negan. But did the loop break her? That's the question Dead City keeps asking. Rick Grimes disappeared in Season 9, Episode 5, What Comes After. Believed dead after destroying a bridge to save his communities from a walker horde. But he wasn't dead. He was taken by Jadis in a CRM helicopter, classified as a B, a leader with potential value, and held by the Civic Republic for years. The 6-year time jump between seasons 9 and 10 skips over Rick's entire absence, and the show continues without him. Judith grows up without her father. RJ is born and knows Rick only through stories. Michonne leaves to search for him. And Rick, somewhere in the CRM's hidden city, tries desperately to escape and can't. The Ones Who Live, the February 2024 limited series, finally tells that story. Rick's been a prisoner for years, working as a CRM soldier, trying to escape back to Alexandria and his family. The CRM catches him every time, and the consequences get worse with each attempt. We learn that Rick cut off his own hand, trying to escape the ultimate echo of the comics, where Rick loses his hand to the governor at the prison, but in the show, it happens to himself by himself. A desperate attempt at freedom. Jadis lied about Rick's classification to save his life. She told the CRM he was a B, ordinary survivor rather than an A, dangerous leader, marked for execution, which kept him alive but also made him valuable enough to watch closely. And Jadis's final act of loyalty to Rick trapped him more effectively than if she'd let him die on that riverbank. Michonne finds him, eventually, following clues across years and continents. Danai Gurira and Andrew Lincoln's chemistry in The Ones Who Live shows two people transformed by separation, Rick broken by years of failed escapes and CRM indoctrination, Michonne hardened by survival alone and desperate searching. Their reunion isn't simple. Rick's afraid that if he goes home, the CRM will destroy Alexandria to punish his escape. Michonne has to convince him that living without his family isn't living at all. The finale of The Ones Who Live delivers something unprecedented in the Walking Dead franchise. Rick kills Beale, the CRM Supreme Commander, and destroys the military apparatus that's been operating in the shadows since Season 8. The CRM had 2,533 troops, a hidden city of 200,000 people, resources that dwarfed anything we'd seen. Rick and Michonne dismantle it, exposing the leadership's genocide of 107,000 Allied survivors across multiple communities. Then, Rick and Michonne go home to Alexandria, to Judith and RJ. The reunion scene in the finale is everything the show denied us when Rick left Judith running into Rick's arms, RJ meeting his father for the first time, Michonne's family whole again after years of absence. Judith's line, "I believed," carries the weight of 6 years of faith that her father was alive somewhere, that he'd come back if he could. The title shift is significant, from The Walking Dead to The Ones Who Live. It's the franchise admitting its own evolution, acknowledging that the story has moved beyond pure survival into something about choosing to live rather than just not dying. Michonne said it first in Season 7, Episode 8. Hearts still beating. We're the ones who live. It was defiance then. Now, it's thesis. Scott Gimple's vision for the franchise includes cross-show breadcrumbs and long-term mythology building. The world beyond the post-credits scene in Season 2, Episode 10, showed a French laboratory with fast reanimating walkers and graffiti reading, "Les morts sont nés ici," the dead are born here. That thread connects to Daryl Dixon in France, which explores variant walkers and the virus's origins. The CRM's experiments, revealed in The Ones Who Live, connect to World Beyond's research facility and the scientists trying to cure or weaponize the infection. It's ambitious storytelling, a universe rather than a single show, with mythology spanning continents and decades. Some fans love the expanded scope. Others miss the focused intimacy of early seasons, when the story was just Rick's group trying to survive another day. But Rick's return proves something important. The franchise can deliver closure when it chooses to. Rick and Michonne's story ended, for now, with them going home, together, alive, choosing family over safety, and love over fear. Rick came home. But what did he leave behind in those walls? The CRM is destroyed, but 200,000 Civic Republic citizens still exist. Their military gone, their leadership exposed as genocidal. What happens to them is a question the franchise hasn't answered yet. The World Beyond, the limited series that ran for 2 seasons from 2020 to 2021, felt like a side story, while it aired teenagers in Nebraska years after the apocalypse started, growing up in the Civic Republic's shelter. But the post-credit scene of the series finale retroactively made it crucial to understanding The Walking Dead's entire mythology. A French laboratory, a scientist working alone, running experiments. She plays a video recording of Dr. Jenner from the CDC discussing wildfire protocol and the virus's behavior. Then she opens a door, and a walker rushes at her, but this walker is different. It moves faster, reanimates almost immediately after being killed. The scientist gets bitten, dies, and reanimates in seconds rather than the usual hours. On the walls, graffiti in French. Les morts sont nés ici. The dead are born here. The virus didn't emerge spontaneously or from nature. It was created in France by scientists trying to help humanity. The apocalypse is the result of research gone catastrophically wrong. Dr. Jenner appears in Season 1, Episode 6, TS-19, at the CDC in Atlanta. He's the last scientist alive in the facility, watching his wife turn into a walker on recorded video over and over, trying to understand the virus and failing. He tells Rick's group that the French were the last to hold out, that he had communication with a lab in France before they went dark. It was the French, he says, then later clarifies he lost contact weeks ago. The World Beyond post-credits scene confirms what Jenner hinted at. The French laboratory was studying the virus, possibly created it, and continued variant research after the apocalypse began. The Violet team mentioned in World Beyond's finale was a research group trying to cure the infection. They failed, creating faster, more aggressive variants instead. This connects directly to Daryl Dixon, which takes the franchise to France and introduces variant walkers the characters call burners. Walkers with acidic properties that burn skin on contact. Season 1 also shows ampers, walkers, enhanced by experimental serums that make them faster and more aggressive. These variants aren't natural evolution. They're the result of continued human experimentation with the virus. And here's where it gets philosophically heavy. Season 1's smart walkers under Frank Darabont, which the show mostly abandoned after he was fired, get retroactively canonized by Angela Kang's later seasons and the Fran storyline. Those early walkers who used tools, tried door handles, picked up rocks, they weren't continuity errors. They were the virus behaving differently before it stabilized into the shambling corpses we're familiar with. The theory thread that emerges, safety's pursuit, literally created the apocalypse. Scientists trying to cure disease, extend life, improve humanity, their research spawned the virus that ended civilization. And afterward, people continued the same pattern. The CRM researching the virus to rebuild civilization. The French lab experimenting to find a cure. Every community seeking safety through control and knowledge and walls. The irony is devastating. The apocalypse was caused by people trying to prevent apocalypse. And the attempts to cure it keep making it worse, creating variants that are faster, stronger, more dangerous. The show's been arguing since Season 1 that people are the real threat, not walkers. The French laboratory proves that literally humanity created its own extinction event while trying to save itself. Daryl in France, separated from everyone he knows, searching for answers about the virus's origins, it's thematically perfect. Daryl, who was nobody in the old world, who found family and purpose in the apocalypse, now standing in the laboratory where the apocalypse was born. The man the collapse saved, confronting the moment of collapse itself. Laurent, the child in Daryl Dixon who was born from a walker mother, represents the next evolution. Some fans theorize he's immune. Others think he's just a normal kid with symbolic significance. The show deliberately keeps it ambiguous, but his existence asks the question, can something good come from the virus? Can the thing that destroyed humanity also transform it into something new? The walls motif shifts again here. The laboratory was a wall meant to keep contamination in, and it failed. The knowledge was supposed to be contained, controlled, weaponized for good. Instead, it escaped and consumed everything. The cure was the disease, and France knew it first. Step back and look at the pattern across the entire Walking Dead franchise. Count the communities: the quarry camp outside Atlanta, the CDC, Herschel's farm, the prison, Woodbury, Terminus, Grady Memorial Hospital, Alexandria, the Hilltop, the Kingdom, the Sanctuary, Oceanside, the Junkyard, the Commonwealth. That's 13 major communities in the main series alone. Add Fear the Walking Dead, the yacht, the Mexican colony, the dam, the stadium, the diner, the Dell Diamond Ballpark, the oil rig, Strand's Tower, Padre. That's at least 9 more. Every single one follows the same arc: discovery, hope, domesticity, hidden threat, collapse. The pattern is so consistent, it can't be accidental. The Walking Dead's narrative structure is built on building safety and then destroying it, over and over, across hundreds of episodes and multiple shows. The showrunner pattern emerges clearly once you see it. Time jumps, skip peace, and arrive at the next crisis. Season 3 to 4 jumps months at the prison, skipping the period when they built stability. Season 9's 6-year jump after Rick's disappearance skips Alexandria's recovery and arrives at the Whisper threat. The show is systematically uninterested in depicting sustained peace. Peace isn't the story. The attempt to build peace and its inevitable failure is the story. Angela Kang, who became showrunner for seasons 9 to 11, described The Walking Dead as a character drama set in horror, not vice versa. The horror is the framework, but the story is about people trying to preserve humanity in circumstances designed to strip it away. And the structural choice to keep destroying communities forces characters to keep rebuilding, keep trying, keep believing that this time might be different. The CRM revelation in The Ones Who Live adds a darker layer. They didn't just destroy communities accidentally through incompetence or bad luck. They systematically genocided 107,000 people from allied communities to maintain their own security. The largest, most organized, most resourceful community in the franchise survived by murdering every potential rival. That's the logical endpoint of the safety at any cost philosophy. Rick and Beale's confrontation in The Ones Who Live finale crystallizes this. Beale argues that the CRM's genocides were justified to ensure civilization's survival. You sacrifice the few to save the many. Eliminate threats before they metastasize. Maintain control through overwhelming force. It's Shane's Barnes speech scaled to empire. It's the governor's Woodbury without the pretense. It's every antagonist's philosophy proven to work in terms of raw survival. Rick kills Beale anyway, not because the logic is wrong, but because the cost is unacceptable. Andrew Lincoln plays the scene with this exhausted rage. Rick's heard this argument before, from Shane, from the governor, from Negan, from himself, in darker moments. And he's learned that survival without humanity is just a different kind of death. The audience question becomes unavoidable. Would you keep building walls, knowing they'll fall? Would you invest in community, knowing it's temporary? Would you plant gardens, form councils, teach children to read, fall in love, have babies, all while understanding that walkers or raiders or your own leadership might destroy everything tomorrow? The Walking Dead argues, over and over through every season and spin-off, that the answer has to be yes. Not because the walls will hold this time, but because building them anyway is what makes us human. The attempt is the point. The hope, even when it's proven futile, even when you know better, that's what separates people who live from people who merely survive. But there's a darker reading available too. Maybe the franchise keeps destroying communities because it's trapped by its own premise. The Walking Dead can't show sustained peace without ceasing to be The Walking Dead. Drama requires conflict. Horror requires threat. The show structurally needs communities to fall, needs walls to be breached, needs safety to fail, or it becomes a different show entirely. Some fans argue Season 11's ending, Alexandria still standing, the Commonwealth being reformed rather than destroyed, communities trading peacefully proves the cycle can break. Others note that the spin-offs immediately separate everyone into new conflicts, suggesting the franchise can't actually sustain peace even when it claims to deliver it. Both readings carry weight. And that's where the pattern starts to click, or at least it might. There's a pattern in The Walking Dead about biological family versus found family, and the distinction matters more as the franchise expands across spin-offs. Biological ties get severed, violently and permanently. But found family bonds endure across continents and years. Lori dies in Season 3. Carl dies in Season 8. Rick disappears in Season 9. The Grimes nuclear family, which was the emotional foundation of the early series, gets systematically destroyed. By Season 11, Judith and RJ are being raised by Michonne, Daryl, Carol, and a community-found family replacing blood family because blood family doesn't survive this world. Fear the Walking Dead follows the same pattern. Madison Clark's family husband Stephen, son Nick, daughter Alicia fractures across the seasons. Stephen dies in Season 1. Nick dies in Season 4. Alicia disappears in Season 7. Madison, who started the series as a protective mother willing to do anything for her biological children, ends up as Padre's collector, kidnapping other people's children to build a new generation that might survive. But found family bonds do something different. Carol crosses an ocean to find Daryl in France. She doesn't have to. Daryl left. Alexandria is safe enough. Carol has other responsibilities. But the bond forged across 11 seasons of the main series compels her to search across countries and continents until she finds him. Daryl's crossbow, which Norman Reedus calls Marianne in interviews, though the show doesn't name it, appears in Daryl Dixon's Season 2. Carol brings it to France, having kept it safe during Daryl's absence. The gesture of returning the crossbow carries years of history. Daryl teaching Carol to shoot in Season 3. Carol bandaging Daryl's wounds across countless fights. The unspoken language of two abuse survivors who found safety with each other. The scene on Omaha Beach in Daryl Dixon, Season 2, where Daryl turns back for LaRonde instead of boarding the boat home, shows the pattern of found family superseding self-preservation. Laurent isn't Daryl's son, not biologically, but Daryl's become his protector, and that bond compels Daryl to stay in France despite having a clear path home to Alexandria. It breaks what the show has called the Dixon cycle, Merle's legacy of abandonment and selfishness that Daryl spent the main series overcoming. Maggie and Negan's relationship in Dead City is perhaps the most complex found family dynamic the franchise has attempted. Negan killed Glenn. That fact never changes, never softens, never becomes forgivable. But Maggie and Negan are bound together anyway, not by forgiveness, but by shared history and mutual understanding of loss. Negan lost his wife Lucille. Maggie lost Glenn. Both are raising children, alone in the apocalypse. Both carry grief that shapes every choice. Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohan play their scenes with this uncomfortable intimacy. Two people who should hate each other, learning to rely on each other because nobody else understands what they've survived. It's not friendship. It's not healing. It's acknowledgement that some bonds get forged in trauma and can't be broken even when they should be. Herschel's watch provides a specific object to track found family across time. Glenn received it from Herschel, a symbol of Herschel accepting Glenn as family, despite the apocalypse erasing traditional marriage and in-law relationships. Glenn wore it through Terminus, through every supply run, through every hard choice. After Glenn's death, Maggie kept it. And presumably, young Herschel Rhee will inherit it eventually, carrying his grandfather and father's legacy in a piece of metal and glass that survived when they didn't. The motif of walls shifts again here. Walls now represent choice rather than just protection or imprisonment. You choose who you protect inside them. You choose who you'd cross walls geographic, emotional, moral to find. Carol choosing to leave Alexandria and cross the Atlantic for Daryl. Daryl choosing to stay in France for Laurent. Maggie choosing not to kill Negan despite years of justified hatred. These choices define identity more than biology or circumstances. Rick's not Rick Grimes, sheriff's deputy. He's Rick Grimes, the man who chose Michonne and Judith and Carl and his communities over safety. Carol's not Carol Pelletier, abused wife. She's Carol, who chose Daryl and Sophia's memory and strategic brutality in service of the people she decided were worth protecting. Found family in The Walking Dead is the family you choose when biology fails. And in a world where everyone's constantly dying, choice becomes the only stable foundation. Leadership in The Walking Dead costs more than blood. It costs sanity, morality, identity. Every major leader across the franchise shows psychological damage that compounds across seasons until leadership and trauma become indistinguishable. Rick hallucinates Laurie for most of Season 3 after her death. He takes phone calls from her ghost, talks to her in empty hallways, sees her watching from the prison yard. Andrew Lincoln plays it with this haunted dissociation, Rick's grip on reality slipping as the burden of keeping everyone alive crushes him. By Season 4, he's stepped back from leadership entirely, trying to farm and pretend he can be just another council member. But Rick can't stop being a leader, because the group won't let him. They keep asking him to make decisions, keep looking to him when things go wrong, keep needing him to be the person who'll do what others can't. By Season 5, Rick's accepted it completely. He's the leader, and that means making brutal choices and living with the cost. His hallucination of Shane in Season 9, Episode 5, suggests he's been arguing with Shane's ghost for years, justifying his choices to a dead man who was right about almost everything. Carol's dissociation operates differently. She fragments herself into different personas: the protective mother, the strategic killer, the gentle baker who makes cookies for children. Melissa McBride plays each version distinctly enough that you can tell which Carol you're watching by posture and vocal tone alone. After Henry's death, during the Whisperer War in Season 9, Carol almost breaks entirely. She becomes reckless, suicidal in her pursuit of Alpha, risking everyone to satisfy her need for revenge. Season 10, Episode 14, Look at the Flowers, gives Carol a full episode of hallucinations where she confronts her guilt. Alpha appears to her, listing everyone: Carol's lost, Sophia, Lizzie, Mika, Sam. Henry and Carol has to acknowledge that she's survived by compartmentalizing loss so completely that she's not sure who she is anymore when she's not protecting or avenging someone. Morgan's oscillation between pacifism and psychosis becomes a running theme from Season 3 through his departure for Fear the Walking Dead. Lenny James plays Morgan's breaks with reality as complete personality shifts. Clear Morgan in Season 3 has booby-trapped an entire town and lost all ability to distinguish friend from threat. Aikido Morgan in Seasons 6 to 7 refuses to kill anyone, building a jail cell for the saviors, because taking life is always wrong. Neither extreme works. Morgan's pacifism gets people killed. His violence spirals into madness. He eventually leaves for Texas in Fear the Walking Dead, specifically because he can't reconcile the person he wants to be with, the person survival keeps forcing him to become. His entire arc is about the psychological impossibility of maintaining moral purity in circumstances designed to destroy it. Madison Clark in Fear the Walking Dead becomes Padres collector in Season 8, kidnapping children from their parents to raise them in a controlled environment that might survive the apocalypse. Kim Dickens plays Madison's transformation from protective mother to authoritarian architect of trauma with chilling logic. Madison believes she's saving these children by taking them from parents who will inevitably fail or die. She's doing to hundreds of children what she wished someone had done for Nick and Alicia, removing them from danger by removing them from attachment. The fact that this makes her a monster doesn't change her belief that she's right. That's the leadership cost. You make choices you can justify to yourself, while everyone else sees the horror of what you've become. Victor Strand's tower in Fear the Walking Dead, Season 7 literalizes the isolation of leadership. Strand builds a tower, lets in only people he personally approves, and becomes a dictator, maintaining control through force and manipulation. Coleman Domingo plays Strand's transformation as someone who learned that caring about people gets you hurt, so he'll create safety through absolute control instead. The tower is both sanctuary and prison, and Strand's the warden who can't leave even when he wants to. Negan's Dead City hallucinations of his wife Lucille show that even years after the Savior War ended, even after imprisonment and redemption arcs, and choosing to help rather than dominate, the cost never stops compounding. Negan sees Lucille judging him, reminding him of who he became after she died, forcing him to confront that he named his murder weapon after his wife's memory. The theory prediction: safety built on control always collapses, but safety built on chosen bonds survives because bonds flex where control breaks. The Walking Dead franchise isn't ending, it's expanding. And the future looks both ambitious and uncertain, with multiple spin-offs in various stages of production and speculation about whether they'll eventually converge. Daryl Dixon. Season 3 is confirmed for filming in Spain, with a September 2025 premiere date announced. The show's taking Daryl across Europe, following the virus's origins and exploring communities that survived the apocalypse differently than American groups. Season 4 has been confirmed as the final season, which suggests the show has an endpoint in mind rather than running indefinitely. Carol's presence in Season 2 and confirmed return in Season 3 means the franchise's longest relationship is getting substantial screen time. Norman Reedus and Melissa McBride have said in interviews that Daryl and Carol's bond is the emotional core of their characters, and the French setting allows them to explore that relationship without the baggage of Alexandria and the communities they've spent years protecting. Dead City. Season 3 is filming in Massachusetts as of early 2025, moving Negan and Maggie's story out of Manhattan and into new territory. The show's been successful enough that renewal was quick, and Lauren Cohan has suggested in interviews that there are stories to tell about Maggie and Herschel Reed's relationship that the main series never had time for. There's also confirmed conversation about a crossover event. Andrew Lincoln said in a March 2024 interview that conversations are happening about bringing characters together from multiple spin-offs. Whether that means Rick and Daryl reuniting, or a larger ensemble event pulling from Dead City, Daryl Dixon, and The Ones Who Live, remains speculation. Scott Gimple's vision for the franchise, stated in multiple interviews, is until 2040 and beyond. He sees The Walking Dead as a universe that can sustain multiple simultaneous stories across different geographic regions and character groups, similar to the Marvel or Star Trek franchises. Whether AMC can maintain audience interest and production budgets for that long is the practical question. Some fan theories suggest all the spin-offs are moving toward a unified finale event. Rick and Michonne returning to Alexandria, Daryl coming home from France, Negan and Maggie's Dead City story concluding, all converging for one final stand against either the CRM remnants or a threat we haven't seen yet. The evidence for this is mostly wishful thinking, but the fact that characters keep mentioning each other across shows, Daryl searching for Rick in France, Judith's narration in The Ones Who Live mentioning her family, suggests the shows exist in a shared timeline even when characters are separated. The alternative theory: the spin-offs will continue indefinitely as separate entities, only occasionally crossing over for special events, allowing the franchise to tell contained stories without requiring viewers to watch everything. This is the more financially sustainable model but less emotionally satisfying for fans who want to see the family reunited. The question of whether the universe should end or keep going divides the fan base. Some fans want closure, a definitive finale where Rick, Daryl, Carol, Maggie, Michonne, and whoever else survived get to rest, where the franchise can say, "This is what happened to everyone," and close the book. They point to the diminishing returns of later seasons, the complexity of following multiple shows, the risk of diluting what made the original series special. Other fans want the universe to continue because the world is larger than any one group's story. The apocalypse affected billions of people across every continent. Why shouldn't we see how France survived? What happened in Asia, Africa, Australia? How do different cultures approach the same collapse? These fans argue that ending the franchise would be artificially limiting its scope. Both perspectives are valid, and the franchise seems to be hedging by producing spin-offs with defined endpoints. Daryl Dixon ending at Season 4, The Ones Who Live as a limited series, while leaving the universe open for new stories. The Commonwealth still exists in the main timeline, a community of 50,000 people trying to rebuild democracy. The CRM is destroyed, but the Civic Republic remains, 200,000 people whose military protectors just got exposed as genocidal. France has answers about the virus, but also variant walkers that make the threat worse. There are stories left to tell if the franchise chooses to tell them. Should the universe end or keep going? Maybe the answer is, it should end when it has nothing left to say. But here's the counter-argument, the alternative reading that's equally valid and maybe more hopeful. Maybe safety did work sometimes. Maybe the cycle is breaking rather than repeating endlessly. Alexandria still stands at the end of Season 11. The walls are damaged, the community's been through hell multiple times. The Saviors, the Whisperers, the Reapers, the Commonwealth occupation. But it survived. Judith and RJ are growing up there. Aaron's raising Gracie. The council still meets. Gardens are planted. Children go to school. It's not perfect, not safe in any absolute sense, but it's sustained. That matters. In a franchise built on destroying communities, Alexandria's survival across seasons 5 through 11 represents something different. Not safety through isolation or domination, but safety through adaptation and chosen bonds. Alexandria survived because people chose to keep rebuilding it, even when leaving might have been easier. The Commonwealth arc in seasons 10 and 11 ends not with destruction, but reformation. Yes, Pamela Milton's leadership was corrupt, stratifying 50,000 people into a class system that exploited workers and protected elites. But the response wasn't to burn the Commonwealth and scatter. It was to remove corrupt leadership and attempt democratic reform. The group chose building over destroying. That's a significant shift from earlier seasons. The prison didn't get reformed, it fell. Woodbury didn't get reformed, Rick destroyed it and absorbed the survivors. Terminus was burned. The sanctuary was abandoned. But the Commonwealth gets a chance to become something better, and the series finale suggests it might work. Rick and Michonne came home. That's unprecedented in The Walking Dead's narrative structure. Characters leave and die, or leave and disappear. They don't escape from militarized organizations, destroy those organizations from within, and return home to their families 6 years later having won. But Rick and Michonne did exactly that in The Ones Who Live. The finale of that series shows Rick being fitted for civilian clothes in the Commonwealth, RJ meeting his father for the first time, Judith showing Rick the communities her generation has built. It's not a perfect ending. Nothing in this universe is perfect. But it's a happy ending by Walking Dead standards, which historically didn't offer those. Judith's final narration in the main series finale, Season 11, Episode 24, Rest in Peace, suggests the franchise might be arguing for hope after all. We get to start over. We're the ones who live. Not, we're the ones who survived. Not, we made it through. We live. Present tense, active choice. The shift from The Walking Dead to The Ones Who Live as a title for Rick and Michonne's spin-off reinforces this. The franchise is acknowledging its own evolution from survival horror to something about choosing life, even in apocalypse. The dead are still walking, but the living have decided that's not the whole story anymore. Kaylee Fleming's delivery of Judith's lines across seasons 9 to 11 consistently emphasizes agency and choice. Judith wasn't born into the old world. She never knew pre-apocalypse safety. But she's building something anyway, not because she believes walls will hold forever, but because building is what people do. Creating meaning is what makes survival worth the cost. The counter-argument to the cycle of destruction thesis. Maybe the cycle was necessary to teach the survivors what actually matters. The CDC, the farm, the prison, Woodbury, Terminus. Each failure taught lessons that made the next community stronger. Alexandria survived because the group had learned from every previous collapse. The Commonwealth survived because leadership had learned that exploitation undermines stability. So the moral question shifts. Is choosing to rebuild despite knowing it'll eventually fall an act of courage or denial? Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just what humans do. We build knowing the building might not last. We love knowing we'll lose people. We hope knowing hope might be disappointed. And we do it anyway because the alternative is giving up. And giving up is its own kind of death. Some fans see the series finale as too hopeful, a betrayal of the franchise's darker themes. Others see it as earned optimism after 11 seasons of loss. Both readings respect the text and viewer interpretation. The ambiguity matters. The Walking Dead has always allowed multiple readings. Let viewers decide whether characters' choices were justified or monstrous. Let moral complexity sit unresolved. The ending continues that tradition. You can see it as the cycle breaking or as a temporary peace before the next collapse. Either way, the characters chose to build, and maybe that choice is courage enough. Return to Rick's hand, gripping the prison fence. Season 3. That routine fence-stabbing duty that felt safe and mundane. The image that opened this exploration now carries different weight after tracing the pattern across the franchise. The fence fell. The prison was overrun by the governor's tank and then a walker herd. Rick lost Lori inside those walls. Carl grew hard and traumatized. Judith was born and immediately orphaned. The place that promised safety became the site of devastating loss. But Rick got back up. That's the pattern that matters more than the falling. Every time a community collapsed, every time walls were breached, every time safety failed, the survivors built again. Not because they were naive about the risks, but because building is what separates living from merely surviving. Rick fell too, eventually. The bridge explosion, the CRM helicopter, 6 years of imprisonment trying to escape. He lost Carl. He lost his communities. He lost years with Judith and never met RJ. The cost of leadership and love and trying to protect everyone crushed him repeatedly, but he came home. Not easily, not without help, not without destroying the organization that held him. But he made it back to Alexandria, to Michonne, to his children. The man who hallucinated Lori's ghost in Season 3, who bit out a throat to save Carl in Season 5, who disappeared in Season 9, believing his family would be safer without him, that man came home. Dr. Jenner, at the CDC in Season 1, Episode 6, told Rick's group, "There is no hope. There never was." He was wrong, or at least incomplete. Hope isn't about rescue arriving or the virus being cured or walls holding forever. Hope is the decision to keep going when there's no rational reason to continue. Hope is Rick choosing to go home despite the risk. Hope is Carol crossing an ocean for Daryl. Hope is Maggie not killing Negan. Hope is Judith wearing her father's hat and believing he's alive somewhere. Laurent and Daryl Dixon might be the franchise's clearest statement on this. A child born from a Walker mother, raised by nuns in post-apocalyptic France, protected by a Dixon who learned to stay instead of run. Laurent's existence asks, can something good grow from the apocalypse? Can the thing that destroyed humanity also transform it? The show's answer, if it has one, seems to be yes, but not automatically. Not through walls or weapons or control, through choice. Through the decision to protect someone who isn't your blood. Through the choice to rebuild, knowing it might not last. Through staying when leaving would be easier. Safety was never a place. The CDC wasn't safe. The farm wasn't safe. The prison, Alexandria, the Commonwealth, none of them were truly safe in any permanent sense. Safety is the decision to stay with people you choose, to protect them when you can and mourn them when you can't, and to keep building anyway. The motif of walls completes its transformation. Walls aren't protection or cages or illusions. They're frames. What you build inside them, who you choose to build with, that's what determines whether the space becomes sanctuary or prison. Rick found family inside Alexandria's walls. The CRM built genocide inside their hidden city. Same structure, different choices, opposite meanings. Carol's cookies baked in Alexandria's kitchen. Daryl's crossbow maintained on quiet nights. Michonne's katana leaning against the wall while she reads to Judith. These small gestures inside walls, these choices to create beauty and normalcy and care in the apocalypse, they matter more than the walls themselves. The emotional shift across this exploration. We started with curiosity about when safety stopped feeling safe. We traced the pattern of communities rising and falling. We recognized that the cycle might be deliberate, might be necessary, might be breaking, or might be eternal, and we arrived at something like acceptance, maybe even fragile hope. Not hope that walls will hold, hope that when they fall, people will build again. Not because they're naive, but because they've learned that the building is the point, the attempt, the choice, the staying. Maybe the walls were never the point. Maybe it was always about who was standing next to you when they came down, who you'd rebuild with, who you'd cross oceans to find, who you'd choose to protect even when protection seems impossible. Sleep well. We'll pick this up next time. The walls might fall, but morning still comes.